Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and welcome to the Week 3 tight end rankings. You can find my complete rankings up on the website, www.theFFforge.com. Link down in the description, link directly below me. And that is updated live all throughout the week, leading up to Sunday morning, where you can catch me 1 hour prior to kickoff for all of your start-sit needs. And if you're into daily fantasy football, stick around to the end of the video for my DFS buys, a discount bin kind of buys, maybe a contrarian suggestion. Let's get into the show. And before we get to my rankings, I want to look back at week 2. How did I do with my DFS buys? How did I do with my love 'em and my fade 'em pick? Well, starting off, I gave you a guy I thought was a fair price without having to pay a premium. And that was Cole Kmet at 4,400. Finished 22nd on the week, so I would say he was probably not fair for what you paid for him at the end of the day for the fantasy points that you got. Gave you a couple of good buys. Hunter Henry at 3,800, Pat Freiermuth at 3,700. Finished second on the week for Hunter Henry, but 50th on the week for Pat Freiermuth, so split that one right down the middle. Then in the discount bin, I gave you 3 names. Dalton Kincaid at 3,300, Luke Musgrave at 3,200, and Logan Thomas at 3,100. Logan Thomas finished 6th on the week. Dalton Kincaid finished 16th on the week, and Luke Musgrave finished 35th on the week, so definitely nailed one of those with Logan Thomas, and I think did okay there with Dalton Kincaid. Luke Musgrave would have been not worth it. And then super contrarian pick of the week gave you Noah Fant at 2,900, a super discount for him, and he finished 13th on the week, so I think that was a good suggestion. Now, how did I do with my fades and my loves? Well, I loved Dalton Kincaid. I had him ranked 15th. And he finished 16th, so the ranking was quite, right on. Would have hoped for a little bit more from a love, but at least the ranking was right on. Then for the Fatum, I had David Njoku, who I had ranked 11th, who finished 30th, and this is why they're fades. Just like the loves, just because I have a ranking on them doesn't mean the love factors, I'm hoping for better than that, much like the Fatum. I'm expecting worse than where I have them ranked. That's going to be true for the most part, and it definitely worked out for Dave Njoku. So I give myself 2 thumbs up, or maybe 1.5 thumbs up there for the Love'ems and the Fade'ems. Now let's move on to Week 3's rankings. And over here on this side of the screen, you can see my number 1 ranking. We'll go through this in some tiers. And over on the far right-hand side is the difference between myself and the ECR as of midday Wednesday, early Wednesday. If it is a positive number, that means I'm higher than the expert consensus ranking from Fantasy Pros website, basically an average of a certain amount of experts that contribute to the website. And if it's a negative number, then that would mean that I am lower than the experts. Let's look at my first tier, which goes through my tight end 8, starting off at tight end 1, I have Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hockenson, Darren Waller, who's in the Thursday night game, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, George Kittle in the Thursday night game, and Sam Laporta. Don't really need to talk about most of these guys. They're basically must-starts. And we're going to start off by just quickly justifying Evan Ingram here. Somehow, despite playing the Mark Andrews-less Ravens and the Colts, the Houston Texans are the 3rd best matchup for tight ends over the first 2 weeks of the season. And then in at tight end 8, I have Sam Laporta, and I had a couple of people who were upset, sad that I didn't say anything about Sam Laporta last week. Apparently, it is mandatory that I talk about him. Through 2 weeks, he's in a 4-way tie for the 5th most targets out of all tight ends on the season, and he's on the field a lot. He's the 8th highest snap count through the first 2 weeks of the season, so yeah, we like him quite a bit. And that's going to bring us to my second tier of tight ends, starting at tight end 9. Now, I'm pretty much going to talk about every guy, so that way there's no tight end left behind this week. Going to give you at least a little bit of commentary on everyone. So I'm just going to kind of read through my notes, starting off at tight end 9. We have Kyle Pitts, and through some research that I did last year, I came to the conclusion that essentially, you should give a tight end 3 weeks before giving up on them. The Detroit Lions are the best matchup for tight ends in the NFL so far, so I'm giving Kyle Pitts one last chance this week. And I wrote here, in fact, I'm going to give him a love him. I hope that brings him some luck. And obviously, I did not end up giving him a love him. I kind of forgot about that. So he is my write-in love him of the week, but we're not going to count it. Moving on to Tyler Higbee in at tight end 10. He's on the field the most out of any tight end in the league. He gets a decent amount of targets, and Cincinnati isn't great against tight ends. They're a top 5 matchup so far on the season. I will give Higbee my faith once again to not suck, at least. And ultimately, once we get past tight end 7, tight end 8 scoring on the week, that's really what we're hoping for. We're hoping that the tight end doesn't suck. So, although I don't love the ceiling for Tyler Higbee, I do like the floor. Then Pat Freiermuth in at tight end 11, and it's a good matchup. Las Vegas has allowed the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends through the first 2 weeks. We're going to give them a little bit of faith. And at tight end 12, we have Hunter Henry. The New York Jets are not great against tight ends, and it's probably the best area of the field to attack them. So, maybe he can keep it up for one more week here. I have Cole Kmet ranked 13th this week, and once again, I am a little bit confused as to why a tight end who is on the field a bunch is tied for 4th in average targets per game and averages as a top 10 tight end through the first 2 weeks, small sample size, is ranked 19th via the ECR. This offense can't get worse, right? So I just noticed normally I collapse this ECR, so you are seeing the ECR rankings that I grabbed. Here is the difference. It's going underneath my image. For some reason, I didn't notice that before I started recording, but we want consistency. That's what we love. So we're going to go with the screw up here, and we're going to move on to my tight end 14 in Zach Ertz. And Dallas is a middle of the line defense against tight ends, at least. But this game could look a lot like Dallas's week 1 game, which is exactly why I have Jake Ferguson and at my tight end 15, despite facing Arizona. It's a fine matchup for him. My tight end 16 is David Njoku this week, 7 spots below the ECR. They had him ranked 9th at the point, at least, of prepping for this video. And on the bright side for David Njoku, he is on the field a lot, and it's not a terrible matchup against Tennessee for tight ends. Tight end 17, I have Dalton Kincaid, and I have nothing against him this week. I'm just not overly excited about him either. He is at the end of this tier, at the end of guys who I am just basically, no doubt, like going to start if I have them. Then I'm going to start him. I'm not even thinking about going to the waiver wire, messing with that. Just going to go with it and hope for the best for all of my top 17 tight ends. That's going to bring us to my third tier of tight ends. Starting off at tight end 18, we have Taysom Hill. Did I mention, by the way, that David Njoku was a fatum of mine? I don't know if I actually said that. So as far as Taysom Hill goes, with Tony Jones Jr. and Kendre Miller as their top running backs this week, would it be a surprise if we saw a game plan essentially built around Taysom Hill and if he got heavily used in week 3? He's definitely a risk. You never know exactly what you're going to get with Taysom, but of all weeks, I love Taysom Hill this week, and you will have probably never heard those words from my mouth in the past, and you will never hear them again. Maybe like 3 or 4 years ago or whatever, I might have said it. I really don't like the untrustworthiness of Taysom most weeks. I'm really optimistic for it this week. I think you could find yourself with the tight end 1 on the week, quite potentially, if you go out and play him. So he is my top, essentially, waiver wire option type of guy. Then at tight end 19, we have Dalton Schultz. You could find yourself a worse matchup to take a shot on. He is a great streaming option this week. It's a top 10 favorable matchup, and it's not like he hasn't been targeted or on the field, because he has been. Maybe week 3 will be his week. Tight end 20, we have Gerald Everett, a guy who I actually thought might be my love-em coming into the week. If Eckler is out again, I like the upside against Minnesota, but it might be a sneaky, not great matchup, actually. Seemingly, offenses have been attacking them along the perimeters and not up the middle of the field. They haven't been a great matchup through 2 weeks. In fact, they've been the 6th worst matchup through the first 2 weeks. Moving on to tight end 21, I have Hayden Hurst, and surprisingly, he is barely on the field for more than 50% of snaps. It is a good matchup, though. At tight end 22, I have Cade Otton. It's an upside shot with him. He's on the field, the second most out of all tight ends, and Philadelphia is the second best tight end matchup so far this season. Then at tight end 23, Juwan Johnson. All offseason, my main fear with him was the inclusion, the splitting of work that I figured might happen with Foster Moreau, which is something that we saw last week. Foster is on the injury report, though, through Wednesday, so I would be more than happy to give Juwan Johnson a shot as long as Foster Moreau is not playing. Otherwise, I'm a little... this is where I would rank him otherwise. At tight end 24, Luke Musgrave. Going up against New Orleans Saints, I have him quite a bit lower than the ECR there. New Orleans is the single worst matchup for tight ends through 2 weeks, and I'm just not overly optimistic about it. At tight end 25, I have Mike Gesicki, and, for the similar reasons that I talked about with Hunter Henry, I don't mind Mike Gesicki. The best way to attack the New York Jets might just be through the tight ends. And at tight end 26, and you can see my tight end 27 now, I have Chigoziem Okonkwo going up against Cleveland. And Cleveland's not a good matchup for tight ends, so it'll probably be the week that Chigoziem Okonkwo absolutely goes off, but I'm not betting on it. And then you can see my final guys that I have ranked this week. Honestly, Michael Mayer shouldn't even be ranked. We're just going to delete that. But Logan Thomas is probably going to be out, and if he is, then it's going to most likely be Cole Turner, who's going to take up the tight end role there in Washington, a role that I really like system-wise for this season, which is why I was quite high on Logan Thomas, especially to start the offseason. And then we didn't know if he was even going to be able to be healthy enough to play week 1, so kind of cooled off on that. But Cole Turner had a really good preseason, so he is somebody to keep your eye. I don't know. I don't even know about keep your eye on. He's like, I guess you could use him as a fantasy option this week going up against Buffalo, not the worst matchup in the world. And, it's just we've seen what preseason studs can end up doing in the regular season, so I'm just not somebody that I would be willing to use in a regular league is all. Then moving on to my DFS buys for the week to finish up this episode, and I do have Hunter Henry, my tight end, 12 this week in as a good buy, costing you $4,100. He's the first one I came across that seemed maybe a little bit price-wise as a good price for compared to where I have him ranked. Evan Ingram almost made that list too, but he's a little bit more expensive. Wanted to go just a little bit cheaper than that for somebody who probably has, a similar upside at the end of the day. Then when we go searching down the prices at $3,100, deep down in the discount bin, I found Cade Otton, somebody who I talked about it. It's the second best matchup through 2 weeks for the tight ends. He's on the field the second most out of all tight ends. So the potential is always there, I think, for Cade Otton to have a big week, and this is one of those matchups where maybe things could come together for him. So I'm willing to take a shot on that. And then I'm going to give you a contrarian name at $3,900, and because of this cost, you look around the guys around him, and I don't think anybody's going to be, not literally, but I don't think anybody's going to be putting their money on Kyle Pitts and spending for him. So I think that he is a contrarian play, and in that case, I almost made him. I love him. Detroit Lions through 2 weeks are the best matchup for tight ends. We know the upside of Kyle Pitts hasn't quite looked like the Kyle Pitts even of last year before his injury and everything so far, but I'm willing to take a shot on him if I'm trying to build one of those big tournament type of lineups where I want somebody to that could go off and nobody else will have them to make my lineup unique. There you go. That is it for all of my rankings for week 3. So you can find them once again up on the website for all the positions, and they get updated throughout the week. And you can come visit me Sunday. So if you made it this far in the video, please give it a like, and feel free to ask any questions, comment, and subscribe if you have not. If you want to, that's appreciated. All right. Bye-bye.